Hi, this is Will Griffiths, GM of Motorverse. We're racing at the edge of interoperability and brand collaboration. You're tuned in to the edge of NFT, your gateway to Web3 information. Keep listening.
Hey Web3 curious enthusiasts, stay tuned for today's episode to learn how Motorverse is driving the future of digital motorsports with its innovative platform taking interoperability to a whole new level.
And explore the thrilling new partnerships Motorverse is forging and their impact on the gaming landscape.
And finally, speaking of racing, find out today's guest's dream car of choice to race around his local town and on the digital racetracks globally.
All this and more on Edge of NFT. Cue the intro.
Welcome to the Edge of NFT, the podcast that brings you the top 1% of Web3 today and what will stand the test of time. We explore the nuts and bolts of the business side and also the human element of how Web3 is changing the way we interact with the things we love. This podcast is for the dreamers, disruptors, and doers who are pumped about this ecosystem and driving where it goes next.
Welcome to the Edge of NFT, the podcast created by Jeff Kelly, Ethan Jenny, and Josh Krieger, featuring a variety of top-notch guests and other hosts like myself, Richard Carthon.
It's another production of the Edge Of Company, a quickly growing media ecosystem empowering the pioneers of Web3 tech and culture and responsible for other groundbreaking endeavors like the Outer Edge LA in Riyadh Innovation Festival.
Today's episode is sponsored as part of a media partnership which features Will Griffiths, a general manager at Motorverse and seasoned strategy expert at Interoperability Brands. With 2 decades of experience spanning startups, blue chips, and government roles, Will now drives the REV ecosystem, a hub of Web3 motorsports games. His career highlights include his role as senior director at strategy at Electronic Arts and boosting Codemaster services before its $1.2 billion acquisition by EA.
Motorverse, a project by Interoperability Brands, is revolutionizing digital motorsports. This platform celebrates digital ownership and fosters collaborations with leading studios like Eden Games and Grease Monkey Games. Eden Games is known for their adrenaline-pumping contributions to the Need for Speed franchise and F1 mobile racing in collaboration with EA and brings unmatched racing. Meanwhile, Grease Monkey Games, through its Torque Motorsports series, collaborates with automotive titans like Nissan and Honda to deliver immersive, high-octane racing experiences. Motorverse isn't just about the need for speed, it's about innovation, offering a garage full of digital racing adventures. Will, we're so excited to have you on the show.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, fun fact, I don't think we talked about this. You may not realize this, but Rev Racing was one of the first collaboration projects that we worked with in the history of Edge of NFT back in 2021.
No way. I have to ask my colleagues about that. It sounds,
Yeah, so it was a really fun story. So Yat came on the show and we really hit it off, and you guys put an Edge of NFT race car in one of your releases that year. So we had 1,000 race cars driving around the metaverse, and it went pretty viral. We had they were selling on OpenSea, and I think my girlfriend might have flipped a race car, and I was upset because I was holding, but she was a flipper.
Yeah, good times. Yeah, there's quite a few different branded Rev Racing cars knocking around. I think I've actually, now that you say it, I think I've seen it because we were reviewing the list the other day. But that's super cool. I'm glad you're an early adopter.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I will say it didn't take the best turns. It could have used some upgrades here and there, but I guess we can work on that. So not a big deal. And it had our old branding, but it looked great for a race car. So with that said, it's great to have you all back to hear what you've been up to since 2021. It's been a minute. And just as a refresher for the new listeners and watchers who weren't around back then, what's really the vision behind Motorverse and this innovative approach that you're taking?
Okay, so we are basically leaning into interoperability. So we've had a big, I guess I joined like 18 months ago now, and I was given Rev Racing, Rev Motorsport, and a bunch of other bits of IP and some different video game studios with a sort of remit to make this bigger sort of umbrella brand, which is the Motorverse. And we did a bunch of market research, and we worked out that there's about 1 billion people who identify as racing gamers or motorsports enthusiasts. This is a really close-knit community of people. They really freaking love cars. They like the way that kind of Web3 represents itself. And we think that interoperable vehicles are basically the future. So essentially what that means is that you buy a car once and it works everywhere. And that is, it's as simple as that. So we're kind of taking this into the mass market and sort of starting to understand how different communities and users are thinking about it.
Yeah, Will, that makes a ton of sense, and really think that all of your background with what you're doing with the Rev ecosystems and Web3 is helping to form what you're doing over at Motorverse. So tell us a little bit about how that background is really helping to impact everything that you're building over at Motorverse.
Well, I've got a reasonably eclectic background. So I've worked in IT security and ethical hacking, but also in free-to-play games, but also in casinos, and then more recently AAA racing games at Codemasters and Electronic Arts. And I think it's a kind of blend of all of them. So I was there at when everything started going free-to-play from the premium model. So this is a transition that I experienced before, and I see the Web3 transition in a similar way. So there are basically a new tool set and a new way of balancing games that we need to adopt. But I think also you need to, it's about kind of understanding stakeholders in the ecosystem. So there's different brands. There's, all the different vehicle brands. We work with MotoGP, we work with Formula E, but we also work with various different vehicle brands and automotive brands. And we've got some very exciting ones that we're going to be announcing soon. And it's basically taking Web3, which is this new tool set, and then working out why as a vehicle brand would I want to get involved in the Motorverse? And to me, I think the answer to that question is that we want to guarantee utility. So if you're going to make a bunch of NFTs, a lot of people have made a lot of NFTs that have no utility or very limited utility or no roadmap for utility. And this has been a real problem for a lot of automotive brands, not just automotive, but many different ones. So we're able to engage with those brands and tell them that we're building an ecosystem where their cars will work in more and more experiences. And we've achieved that by creating this standard that the cars can adhere to. So that solves the brands. And they like that because it means they guarantee they sell out. And the value of the assets may well go up because they work in more and more different places. And as more and more games join in, they bring new audiences, which then drives the secondary market. So brands are happy. Then the game studios, the biggest problems that game studios make, apart from actually making a fun game, which is very, very difficult in itself, is once that's been done, then they need to get users into the game. So one of the biggest costs that you often don't see or hear about when you think about these games is how do we actually bring new people into the game, especially if it's a free game. And another big problem that game studios have is getting licenses. So we're solving for the licenses centrally. So we approach the brands. They agree to publish cars on the Motorverse. Those cars can then be made available to these game studios that perhaps wouldn't have had access to these kinds of cars in a normal run of things, where it would have been a big cost for them. Plus, they get access to all the holders. So if you imagine, you have 100,000 people who bought a car. They obviously have spent a little bit more than they would normally spend on a car in a game. It's a collectible, a digital collectible, an NFT. They all receive a notification that their car now works somewhere new. So this is pretty cool. And we also know these guys are going to be pretty engaged users, big spenders, and so they're very likely to then go to the game. So now, if I'm a studio and I make a game, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to get a large number of users via the Motorverse. And I get access to these brands. So now I have enough incentive to build a game against this standard. So that means the games the games companies and the experience builders have a reason and have their incentives aligned with the brands. And then as a user, we sometimes talk about Web 2 users and Web 3 users, and I don't really like doing that, for persona stuff, because I think they will end up blurring. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll use that. The Web 2 users is a very simple proposition. So people who are used to going to multiple different games and buying cars or earning cars or grinding points through to get cars, now they buy the car once and it works everywhere. Plus they can sell it. Okay, so this is a very easy to communicate thing. And I try this out by, when we go down the pub with the dads from school, I kind of try out little sound bites on them. And this is something that resonates with them. And then you've also got your Web3 users. So I'm not expecting suddenly, millions of Web2 users to come up and buy these interoperable cars, because it will take time. I believe that long term, it will become normal and in fact, what's expected from different communities. But right now it's not. And so we're leaning into the Web3 personas as a kind of growth engine at the start. And that's where things like staking and rewards and point fight come in.
Well, let's dive in more here. But I just want to say, like, there's something really novel about what you guys are doing, but it's also something that someone that's like been around cars and fans probably should have thought of like 10 years ago, right? Because fundamentally, just like you love Madden football, like there's nothing I want more than to be able to bring my slightly older, more refined quarterback, Tom Brady, with me to the next season. I don't want to necessarily discard a quarterback just because a new game season has come out, right? And similarly, like people fall in love with their cars and they fall in love with the mechanics, how it runs, the look, the feel. It may not be the newest model, but for them, it's the model they want, or maybe eventually they don't love their car anymore. They want to get another car. So it sounds like a lot of this, this sort of adjustment and philosophy is really more or less aligning with the true sort of nature of car and race car lovers universally.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth in that. I mean, this is I often end up talking about this part, which is, if you have to if you're in these walled gardens of different games, which is really a learned behavior, right? Like we just have learned that if you want to have a car in this game, you got to go buy this car in this game when but actually that's not really how our brains work, is it? We think about things that we own that persist in different places. So if you own a real car, it goes everywhere with you, right? And you tell a story with it. You kind of have everyone has like road trip stories, or like remember being places, and part of that memory is what car are we in, like remember when we went camping, remember when we went here. And then if you're into racing, then that is amplified, right? Because you take your car to track days and things like that. So I think that all that data that from all these different games is kept in these silos, and we can bring that together and start to tell the story. So then you have this sort of provenance of vehicles, who's owned it, when, what events has it been at, what did it witness, was it there during the great crash of blah blah blah. All that kind of stuff is kind of lost currently, but with this central publishing of cars, which can then be used in multiple locations, then you start to like approximate more to the real world and beyond, right? There's all kinds of things that you can attach to it. I think the other thing that is particularly interesting about cars is often the conversation about interoperability could be around, like, I don't know, a magic wand or a sword or something, and like it's difficult to imagine the context for that if you take it out of one game and try and put it in another. But cars, all these different developers spend a lot of time and money trying to make them behave exactly as you would expect them to behave in the real world, because they're targeting the metadata of these particular models and cars. So there is a standard out there already, so everyone knows how fast this car is compared to this car. So there's less room for confusion or getting the balancing wrong between different games. And the other thing that's particularly interesting about cars is that probably more so than most other games, I mean, it's starting to change a bit recently, but really for the last 10 years, maybe more, cars have been photorealistic in games, so they look really like the real world cars, or very, very close to. And so they start to become less of a gaming asset. Like if I'm a really big fan of Lamborghinis and then I see a perfectly rendered Lamborghini on a website, I don't have to be a gamer to appreciate it. If I just, I might want to buy it just because I really love the brand and the way it looks. So I think that's another place where cars are a particular use case that makes a very strong, a very strong case for starting here for interoperability.
So we'll really appreciate all that context on the game. And obviously there is a blockchain component to all this, which is the Rev token. How does that fit into the grander scheme here?
Well, so the Rev token is our first sort of interoperable layer. So it's a fungible token. It's been around for a while. It's listed on a bunch of centralized exchanges. And we use that token as our store of value, and as a way of transferring value around the ecosystem. So like when we sell cars, we sell them in Rev. When we're having interactions between different actors in our ecosystem, we use Rev as a base transactional value. Soon the Grassini fan-powered sponsorship will accept Rev. All of the games can offer Rev as reward, or we can use it for airdropping on users and things like that. But one of the things I really like about it is it allows us to do deals with other Web3 communities. So, for example, if we find another project that's related to motorsport, and there are many, we're able to do token swaps between our ecosystem and another group, and this aligns all of our our incentives and the way we think about value between the two. So we will longer term we will have many different Web3 tokens in our treasury from different motorsports projects, and we'll be using them to reward existing users inside the Motorverse in different ways, but also to draw attention from those other Web3 communities to the Motorverse, and they will have Rev token in their communities, which they can use to reward their users. And so we get this really awesome cross-pollination.
Really cool. Thank you for explaining that to us. It's like the ultimate sort of co-creation economy lubricant, to use a racing term. You need oil for that economy to sort of race on all these different tracks and all work together. So that's really great.
Yeah, and one other thing on it is it's a great way for basically implementing governance in the Motorverse. And by that I mean, if you hold Rev, you'll be able to vote on things within the ecosystem, and at the same time you're able right now to stake it as part of your Motorverse hub experience and basically back the project. So if you believe, one way of supporting us is to stake Rev, and we'll reward you for that with various different things like in real life t-shirts, access to things, maybe more. So it's a really powerful concept.
I agree. So on so many levels. One, I love video games. Two, I love racing video games. Three, I love cars. So we're touching on 3 points that are very near and dear to my heart. And now we're talking about interoperability, something that's very challenging technically to accomplish by being able to bring consistency across games, and for to get the look and the feel and how the car drives, all these different elements. There's a lot that goes into that. So like, what has been some of the challenges that you've faced and have had to overcome with creating this standard for Motorverse to make things more interoperable?
So we're fortunate because we have 3 in-house racing studios. Okay, and we've also, when I arrived, we had these relationships with different motorsport. So for me, it's a bit like if you let's say you were designing a user experience for any kind of website or game, and you know that you've had a good go at it, but you need to get some feedback because there's going to be a bunch of different, maybe you didn't think about it on a mobile, or you didn't consider what would happen if somebody lost connection or they're on a different kind of browser or something like this. So you go around and you test it with a few different people, and we've got all these people that we could test this standard with. So we had a very talented designer who's part of our team come up with the first pass of the standard based on everything he knew about motorsports and cars and bikes, and looked at lots of different things, and he designed databases and things before. So he's thinking about what are the things you need to define a car, like the chassis and the paint color, but then also the wheels, the internal trim, the engine, the like various different chips and things that you might need to add to it. And then we started sharing it we were basically like testing it out. So we'd like sort of launch it to a studio and have them feedback on it. And you find it's kind of like the popcorn model. So to begin with, there's loads and loads and loads and loads of feedback from the first few that you share it with, because they're like, oh, that would never work because of this. We hadn't considered that. And then we're getting to the point now when we share it with a new stakeholder, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Can't think of any improvements. So there's been this sort of optimization, and I'm sure there will be further versions of it and things like that. And to begin with, it's just a metadata standard, but now we're looking at how because what we want to avoid is a world where we have like a spreadsheet that defines a car, and then every single studio has to then go and do the work to do all the 3DR and all that, the handling and all this stuff. And so we're looking at using our Rev token as a means of value transfer for like the first people to do a car to be able to sell their model to other people. So this should be good because it will speed up the rate of adoption and how long it takes for people to make games for the Motorverse. And it just saves time and resource.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Did from an IP perspective, was there any pushback from different brands being sort of co-located in a set of games, like where they're like, well, if they're part of your game, I don't want to be part of your game, or was it sort of like, is it just kind of understood because of the nature of racing that there's going to be a lot of different brands that are just in our world, and ultimately we're creating a better experience for the user as a result?
So there's kind of two parts to the answer. So there are definitely a lot of requirements that different brands have around how their cars are represented. So for example, if you were to have some sort of feature art for a video game that contained two luxury sports car brands, then usually there are conditions around like not showing one in front of the other, because it might imply that it's faster than the competitor.
Yeah, we don't want another one of those Elon Musk situations.
Yeah. But essentially, pretty much all of the cars coexist in games already, right? So there are like things like Forza and Gran Turismo have got a lot of the different models in. So like it can be made to work in terms of, so that's like the industry that we're in. Then the Motorverse specifically, it's a new type of license that we're doing. So the way that I normally describe it is as I was saying before, is like you're publishing cars. It's a bit like the real automobile model, right? So like if I'm, I don't know, Porsche or whoever, I decide I'm going to make a run of cars. That's the same thing that's happening here, because there's a finite supply, right? It's the NFT. So they'll be like, okay, we're also going to publish a bunch of cars over here. Just to be clear, Porsche is not working with us in this way. It's just using them as an example. And then those cars can be used anywhere. But then because that we're adhering to the performance data around the car, it will perform relative to other cars based on that, if you see what I mean. Because that's what would happen in the real world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really helpful to get your perspective on that. I spent a little time in IP before getting into Web3, and I think it's just a fascinating sort of opportunity and challenge. How do we work with all these different IP companies, bring them along, make them comfortable, make them feel at home, and create a good user experience? So the sort of fun stuff that keeps you up at night. But
I think.
go ahead.
I just a little bit more on that. I mean, there are obviously some brands that are very open to it, whereas other brands, I think, are, just quietly watching, see what happens. And the way that the sort of mental model that I have is I'm picking a few kind of, marquee brands that I think once they come on board, the others will likely follow. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So we're sort of proving it out with forward-thinking brands that are, highly desirable. And then once they've proven the model, then it becomes a much easier conversation with
Cool.
people who are a little bit less keen to start with. Because it's a scary space, right? I know it's the NFT podcast, but we think this stuff is awesome. But I think some of the more traditional brands are like pretty skeptical.
Yeah. Look, we're enthusiasts, but we're not zealots. We try to have real, authentic conversations about the puts and takes here, and so appreciate your perspective. But there's a lot of fun stuff happening, a lot of great utility here. But I think in some cases this is still exploratory new terrain, and the jury's out, and some things will work and some things won't, and that's part of the fun and the opportunity to innovate. On that note, speaking of innovation, you're also deploying some exciting new features in one of your games, Torque Drift 2. I'm curious about what they're all about, how they're going to change gameplay, and how they relate to this broader strategy that we've been talking about.
So Talk Drift 2 is made by a studio called Grease Monkey Games. They're based in Melbourne, and they're very, as the name of the game suggests, they're very skewed towards drift games. So they've made 2 mobile games in the drift space before they were acquired by Animoca. And then since they've joined, they've been working on a AAA. So the first AAA racing Web3 game is also free to play, and it's on the Epic Store. So they're in early access, right? So the game is still, it's been kind of having key features added still. I think they're planning to sort of finally launch in time for the end of the year. But you can play it now. 400,000 people have played the game so far, which is awesome. And it's got Web3 assets in it. So you can buy cars like you would in any normal game and just have a normal kind of gameplay experience where you drift. And I'll tell you a bit about the latest update in a sec. But you can also buy NFT versions of those cars, which are sort of special editions, which come with all the benefits of NFTs on top of the benefits that you would normally get in the game. So these are cars that are freely tradable and can be, potentially used in other games in the future. Now, the studio themselves, I mean, it's all made in Unreal Engine 5, so you can, if you haven't had a look, go check it out. Talk Drift 2 on the Epic Store, you'll see fairly quickly that the graphics are pretty amazing. I mean, It looks like Forza or Gran Turismo, basically. And it's they're recreating all these different famous locations for drifting. The 0.9 update came out about a month ago, I think, and it's added a freestyle game mode, it makes me think a little bit of like Tony Hawk or SSX or something, where you have to drift around and hit all these different targets in a time kind of, it's a sort of timed event, but it's lots of fun. And they've also added in multiplayer leaderboards, which is something that obviously, is fairly straight. This is what I mean about early access. Fairly obviously we need to add it. It's just, but it's really nice now because we're getting quite a lot of banter going on between the players, both in the game and on social media, and a bunch more cars. So they already had, I can't remember exactly how many cars, but quite a lot. And they've just added another 9 cars to the game, and various different, updates and all the normal bug fixes and stuff. But we're getting a lot of really good feedback, and I know they have another big update coming in the next few weeks with a bunch more stuff. So.
One of the features in there that I want to spend a little bit of time on that I think is really cool is that you guys are also incorporating things like AI into this game. And so, like, of course, you have like dynamic mission systems, you have AI generated tasks, and a lot of other things. Like how has the community, the 400,000 strong, been receptive to these types of features?
Oh, there's a lot of conversation about them. I think they're enjoying them. I think there's a it's relatively new territory for us. In fact, there's quite a lot of conversations that we have about AI more broadly for the ecosystem, where we're thinking about how we leverage it to solve some of the interoperability challenges that we were talking about before. So if you think about taking a car, someone's drawn a car and made it work and feel exactly how it should over here in Unreal Engine 5, and there's another studio over here that's doing it in Unity, wants to do it in Unity. The process of taking that car, remodeling it in the right graphics, changing the lighting and all of the effects on it, and then getting the handling to feel correct in the other game is quite a painstaking process. But it is, to some extent, there are areas of it that could be automated or put through AI, because essentially it's a kind of goal seek type thing. And there's another bit of AI that we talk about a lot, which we tend to get quite excited about and try not to have like stupidly long meetings. But you can imagine a world where people can design their own cars. It doesn't tend to end well. I don't know if you've ever seen the Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson is invited to design a car, and it doesn't really go very well because he kind of adds all these crazy features to it. And so that is often the outcome. But like by combining, user input with AI, it's possible, we think, to do something a little bit more interesting, where you actually end up with a car that makes sense and works and performs in a way that you might think, but also has had some input from the user. Now that's a little bit of a way off, but it's what you've said. You've got you guys are into AI as well, but there's whenever people are talking about AI, like, people think things are further away than they are. Even a couple of years ago, the 3D stuff was pretty basic, and it's starting to look quite interesting now. So yeah, we think AI is really interesting. Always thinking about it.
We'll have to have you on the Edge of AI show to talk more about AI. There's so many fun implications for gaming in terms of customizing the user experience, accelerating game development. But for now, there's also some really cool collaborations you're working on, and we want to talk about them, including Grassini Racing. What are some of the unique experiences that players can expect from this partnership?
So we have a very strong relationship with MotoGP. So we have multiple different IPs that we work with them. And one of the guys on my team who looks after the MotoGP stuff had this idea around tokenizing sponsorship. So this came about because we were sponsoring the Grassini team. And at the same time, we were talking to the head of the team about Carlo, about how we think about Web3 and sort of introducing him to the concept and stuff. And then during a kind of brainstorming session, Graham from my team was like, hang on a minute, why don't we try connecting the fans more to the team? Because at the moment, obviously, people are fans of various different races and stuff. So Grassini is one of the teams that races in MotoGP. So like, the equivalent of like McLaren or Ferrari in Formula One. They have two riders. And we were sponsoring them anyway, because we have this product called MotoGP Guru, which is a predictor kind of fantasy product. And we decided that we would experiment with this year. So we've just launched this. Basically, what's the best way to describe it? Essentially, as a fan of Grassini, you can buy a digital certificate for this season that proves that you're a sponsor. Okay, and there are multiple different benefits that you get from doing that. So on the most basic tier, you're able to like meet the riders from the team on a video call. You get your name on the website, you get your certificate, you get a t-shirt, get various discounts on other bits and pieces, and then you'll be like in the official At the end of the season, there'll be like a sort of book that summarizes the season, and you'll be in there. You get an email from the principal, from the team, welcoming you aboard, and various other bits, but all the way through to the top end where you can have your name actually on the bike. So your name, and you'll be able to attend the race with 3 other people, and meet the riders, spend time with them, go to the box, experience the race from a completely different angle that you wouldn't otherwise be able to have access to, be like driven around the paddock on scooters and have corporate hospitality and meet the whole of the Grassini team. So it's quite an interesting proposition. It's been live for a couple of weeks. Once the season's finished, you'll have this certificate which you can carry through, and then you can like layer that season on season and sort of become a mega fan. But the early indications has been like really, really well received. So we were hoping that we'd have, it was kind of like a test, but it's been quite overwhelming, the response we've had. So it's going very well, just from an engagement point of view, but also many other teams, not just within MotoGP, are reaching out to us. So it's pretty exciting.
I mean, that type of fan engagement's what it's all about. People have these sort of affiliations that run really deep in their veins, and if you can sort of add layers and layers of value and creativity to a game experience, that's what people love. I'll mention the football analogy again, even though it's basketball season, but anytime I can do anything special with the New England Patriots when it comes to NFL Rivals, another sort of sports game, I want to do that. And I think the same holds true for racing fans. They want to have that deep relationship with the brands they love. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think having this type of different fan engagement at the deeper level, and then having it to a place to where you can bring it on more and more games, because of the crew, I'm definitely the gamer, and I know I play a lot of different games. Some that you brought up, like Gran Turismo and some of these others, and the idea of like being able to bring that car and like to like other places, like I played Grand Theft Auto, I played a bunch of other stuff, and like consistently being able to bring these cars throughout all these games just sounds like a faraway fantasy to me. So being able to like, as the future of Web3 gaming is like making this possible, like Motorverse, I think that's awesome. And I actually want to keep going down that train of thought just for a second of just, where do you see and envision the future of digital motorsports evolving over the next few years?
So I get asked this question a lot. So I think in the short term, I want to get maybe 5 to 10 different brands over the next couple of years who are like fully embedded in this ecosystem, and they're picking up the phone to us about like when they're launching new cars. And then in the long term, for the Motorverse, which is this hub we're building. So this brings all of this together in a single place that already exists. It's a website, motorverse.com. You go check it out. You can join and like read all about the white paper and stake and points and rewards and stuff. But I want that to become certainly a forecourt of the internet, right? And I think the more I want to sort of see an inflection point where interoperable cars become the norm. So I think the more people that adopt this standard and start selling, or the more brands that adopt the standard and start selling these cars to work in multiple games, we're adding games all the time too. So we have 10 games at the moment, a mixture of Web 2 and Web 3 games, and we're speaking, obviously making our own games in-house, but we're speaking to 30 or 40 other projects in Web 3 and Web 2 space about potentially publishing on the site. So you end up with almost like a Netflix type experience where you pick your car that you want to drive today, and then you choose where you want to take it to. And that to me is, where we're heading. And then eventually, I think I'll know that we're going on the right track when, the users of some of these big franchises start to like query why their cars in those franchises are not interoperable. and start to demand that from the other publishers. So that's where we're heading.
I love it. That's a really cool grand vision, and that's the type of stuff we love to talk about on the edge of NFTs. So really enjoyed this part of the conversation, but we also want to get to know you better, Will, and let our listeners and viewers get to know you better. So we're going to move on to the next segment.
A quick word from our sponsors who's ready to navigate the cutting edge of tomorrow's legal landscape. Because at Zuber Lawler, they're not just attorneys, they're visionaries. With expertise in emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, and the metaverse, they're paving the way for you to seize the future. For mergers and acquisitions to IP, their selective team delivers strategic solutions tailored to the ever-changing world of technology. Join us at Zuber Lawler, where the future meets the law at zuberlawler.com. Back to the episode.
So Edge Quick Hitters is our fun, quick way to get to know you a little better, Will. There's going to be 10 questions. We're looking for just a short single or few word response, but feel free to expand if you get the urge. You ready?
Yes, always.
All right. Or I should say, start your engine. Okay. What is the first thing you remember ever purchasing in your life?
Now 24. It's a music album.
Okay. Should I check them out, or was that like past taste?
It's like a compilation thing on a tape in the 90s. I'd saved up for it. I'd been strawberry picking, saving up money so I could buy this tape. So it was like this on the pedestal thing. And then I listened to it on a tape player at home. And I can remember all the tracks.
Nice. So second question, what is the first thing you remember ever selling in your life?
It's music again. I think I sold a CD so that I could go out and meet a girl and pay for dinner. I think it was the Cranberries' first album, the Irish band.
Nice. So I just went back to my old woods and have so many CDs and cassettes in storage, and it's like a painful thing. Do I get rid of them? Do I keep them? If I keep them, should I transfer them? It's a whole sort of discussion, but those were the good old days when CDs were actually worth enough for a nice dinner.
Yeah. I've got a box like that.
It's awesome, man. Well, let's talk about more recently. What is one of the most recent things that you have purchased?
I have just bought a tennis racket. Here we go. I don't know if you can see this.
For all those listening on the podcast, if you go check out on YouTube, he just showed a really awesome racket.
Yeah, it makes me not want to play Will in tennis because I haven't picked up my racket in a while.
Well, I haven't actually played for a little while. So because we just moved to Australia, and so all of our stuff is, coming over on a ship. But I decided to take this opportunity to upgrade my tennis racket, and I'll be joining a club soon. So I haven't played too much recently. Maybe we should have a game.
Nice. I might just have a chance. So on the opposite side of that, what is one of the most recent things that you've sold?
Oh, because we just moved, we sold a lot of stuff. What did I sell? I sold my car. I had a Discovery Sport, and we sold it to our good friends and neighbors just down the road. It was a sad day.
Yeah, makes sense, but very necessary as you, I guess, go in a different country.
Yeah, I guess the key is you just have to invest in some digital cars and in your overall ecosystem, and then you don't have this issue moving forward. Just upgrade them or whatnot. For now, what is your most prized possession?
I think probably my laptop. I don't know. Like I feel like I've got sort of, there's just so much happening on it, and I kind of enjoy using it even at the weekends. Yeah, it's the thing I use the most. I mean, that sounds a bit I'm not particularly sort of materialistic, so I don't have like nice watches or anything like that. You know, like I'm more just about the experience.
Yeah. Hey, I'm in love with my new M3 chip
Oh
Apple
wow.
laptop because I couldn't figure out, I had a tab problem. Everyone that works with Edge knows I have 150 plus tabs open. And rather than solve that problem, I needed a laptop that can handle that many tabs open. So I found one. So that was my workaround.
That's definitely the right answer to that problem for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could buy anything in the world, digital, physical, service, experience that's currently for sale, what would it be?
I think that so I really I really enjoy skiing, and I think I would probably buy. I mean, this is a bit far fetched, but like I would probably buy like a sort of ski chalet, something like that, so I could go and ski, whenever I wanted. I think that just knowing that I had something like that I would like that. But it's a
Yeah.
little far fetched. Maybe I need to upgrade my laptop to an M3. I've got an M1 at the moment, so
No,
Pretty
all
sweet.
good.
Pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, that's the first. I don't think I've heard anyone say that, but like that's a cool one because I mean skiing is incredible, and just knowing that you just go at a drop of a dime like sounds pretty epic. So, for the purpose of that question, that was a very fair answer, and so that was a great response. Now, the next question has to do with if you could pass on one of your personality traits to the next generation, what would it be?
oof. Um, well, I've got kids. I've got two little girls, so I'm trying to do that all the time. um, I I value, I try to be as open minded as I can about everything because I always find that um, I try not to sort of fight my mind closing off for as long as I can as I drift into middle age. Like I want to engage with the world and be excited and curious about things. So that's what I try to pass on to my kids.
Yeah, open-mindedness is a great one, and it doesn't put limits on yourself and allows you to see a lot more. So I think that's a great one. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, if you could eliminate one of your personality traits for the next generation, what would it be?
Um, I think, uh, I think I would. Um, I can be. I'm not a big social media person. I know that in some ways it's important, and I think that that's not really a personality trait, though, is it? I think I would probably eliminate. I think I spent time when I was younger worrying about what other people think, and I would probably try and eradicate that as much as possible.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great one. So, next question, Will. What did you do just before joining us on this podcast?
I made a coffee. It's the morning here. I said goodbye to my kids as they went off to school, and then I adjusted. I've got a standing desk, and I went from the seated to standing position. Is that the sort of answer you want?
Yeah, Will, that's perfect. We just want to get to know you. I've got a standing desk too that's stuck
Nice.
on stuck. It won't move up, so I have to fix it. It's on my to-do list. What are you going to do next after the podcast?
I have a meeting, and I'm meeting somebody who's a recent joiner from Animoca immediately after this. So I'll be meeting him and then after that, I am taking a walk along the river in Perth to take some other calls.
Sounds good. You can give all the new team members a copy of this show as part of their orientation.
They'd love that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And we always like to wrap up with A fun bonus question. So we're talking about cars, so got to bring it there. What is your dream car that you would have in both IRL and that you could bring to the Motorverse?
I love Audis. I really like Audis, and the sports range. So like probably an R8. I mean, like that's very self-indulgent now because we've got, like it wouldn't work very well with the kids, but that's the car that I would like to drive for sure. And I think it's just got really nice lines. So I probably would, I think it'd be a very desirable NFT as well.
Yeah, it's an awesome car. It's a really sweet car. So I don't blame you on that. And yeah, hey, nothing wrong with having a toy car. You can always have the family car, but always something that you can go have fun in.
Yeah, totally.
And now for a quick word from our sponsor before we dive into the next segment. Are you ready to take your sports predictions to the next level? Look no further than maincard.io, the fantasy management platform that's taking the blockchain world by storm. With MainCard, every card is a ticket to excitement. You can predict sport outcomes, trade cards in the marketplace, and challenge opponents in thrilling weekly duels. And don't wait. Head to maincard.io now and start earning rewards with your NFTs because it pays to be early. And now back to today's episode.
Well, before we move on to the next race, is there anyone in your orbit that you want to shout out that you think has been, particularly valuable contributor to what you guys are building? Maybe doesn't get enough spotlight attention.
Oh, there's a lot of people. So in the team we have, the whole team's amazing. So we have people in Lyon in France. We have who are working on one of the upcoming games, which I can't share too much about, but that whole team has been, absolutely smashing it. So really looking forward to what they're making. And I don't think many people know that they're all squirreling away on that. So definitely a big shout out to the Eden Games team. And I think my marketing director, Ilya, he's doing so much stuff, including organizing for me to come on the show. So, and he's one of those marketing guys who he does a lot, but he's not sort of in the public eye. So, a big shout out to him too.
Nice. Shout out. Yeah. Thanks for bringing Will on wherever you are. Really cool conversation. And we covered it before, but for our listeners at home, if you are a little bit more curious now about what's going on with the world of Motorverse, you can go to motorverse.com, and that will lead you down the rabbit hole to their Twitter handle, which is at the Motorverse, and then you can get on Discord and kind of go from there. Definitely encourage you, if you're a fan of racing and games, to see what these guys have cooking. And with that, we have reached the outer limit at the edge of NFT for today. So thanks for exploring with us. We've got space for more adventures on the Starship. So invite your friends and recruit some cool strangers that will make this journey also much better. If you're listening, go to Spotify or iTunes right now, rate us, and say something awesome. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, join over 133,000 other followers by hitting the subscribe button, passing this episode on to a friend or two. Lastly, you can now also catch us on myco.co, where you can watch and earn for participating in our podcast ecosystem. So lastly, be sure to tune in next time for more great Web3 content. Thanks again for sharing this time with us today.
The views and opinions expressed on Edge of NFT reflect solely those views and opinions of the show hosts and its guests. Please make sure to do your own research. Our show is not financial advice. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this podcast at your own risk. Whenever making financial decisions, we recommend doing your own research and talking to your accountant for financial advice. From time to time, we may feature sponsored content on the show for which we receive value, and we may share links for which we receive a commission if you make a purchase through one of those links. Refer to our website, www.edgeofnft.com, for our full disclaimer, terms and conditions, and privacy policy.